Hello, good evening. How are you all doing? Nice to see you all. Let me pop you on gallery view. Peering into your living rooms, kitchens, bedrooms, bathrooms. Thanks for joining me this evening. Tearing yourselves away from the US election. I'm sure it's been having you gripped all day, or not maybe.
No.
So we had a lot of people sign up, which was great. We'll see how many people make it. You know what it's like with these evening webinars. I've been there myself. You decide that it's something you really want to attend. You have all the best intentions, and then sometimes something else gets in the way. But not to worry. And just to let you know as well that if for whatever reason you need to pop off or do something else, I will be recording this, and we will also send out the recording tomorrow. But hopefully you won't leave now. Okay, so look, we've got to 7:30, so we'll launch into this. We will absolutely be done by 9 o'clock at the latest in terms of everything that I'd like to share with you. But I don't need to disappear at 9 o'clock. So if anybody wants to have a chat with me about anything, I'm very happy to stay on for another half an hour or so. So that's an open invitation. But equally, you might have had enough by then and want to go home, or you're home already probably, but maybe go and watch some TV or something like that. So look, let's kick off. I'm Gavin Andrews. I'm the Managing Director of HeartMath in the UK and Ireland. And so welcome to our webinar this evening, The Future of Coaching. I'm going to share with you some slides, some information, some of the scientific background of HeartMath. And I'm also going to share some of the information about the biofeedback technology. And I'm also going to share 3 different techniques with you as well. So you'll have useful stuff that you can take away from this in the terms of information, but also some very simple practical techniques that you can use for yourself and that you're welcome to share with your clients and coachees as well. So let me pop into my slides. There we go. I'll share this. Okay. So let's start with the basics. We are all currently living in a rather complicated world. It's a little chaotic. Well, it's very chaotic at the moment, particularly with coronavirus, US election, all sorts of things going on out there. So it's a chaotic, it's a complex environment. It's a very confusing world to live in at times. It's hard to know, where to put your focus, where to put your beliefs, where to put your energies. And so more and more, we're faced with challenge in the world that we live in. And that is a problem for us because, unfortunately, in terms of our evolutionary history, our operating system's a little bit outdated. So we evolved to live in a world of very significant but relatively infrequent stress. So anthropologists reckon that we probably would have experienced maybe 1 or 2 significant stresses a week, by which I mean, a matter of life and death, basically. So perhaps attacked by a wild animal, or bumping into the next door tribe and having a bit of a dust up with them, or, something like running out of food in our environment and potentially starving to death. So once or twice a week, we would have had a significant stressor. It would have required us to go into fight, flight, or freeze mode. And actually, you know what? So long as we survive, that's actually good for us. But of course, the world that we live in now is somewhat different. It's a world of continuous, enduring, lower level stresses. There's psychosocial stressors, they're ego-based stressors, status anxieties, things like that. But of course, the body, our operating system, is responding in pretty much the same way. So what we need, and what I think HeartMath offers, is a way of sort of hacking into the autonomic nervous system, the operating system, and upgrading it to deal with the type of world that we're living in right now. Okay, so question for you. Here's a picture. I would like you to have a think about what you think she's feeling. So what do you think she's feeling? I'll just give you a few seconds. Okay, and then I'm going to pop out of share so that I can see you all. And then just pop in a chat box. What do you think she was feeling? There's no correct answer, by the way, but just pop stuff in there. So let's have a look. We've got a relief, we've got a gratitude, love, love, another gratitude, calm, peacefulness, another love, another gratitude, peace, peace. Yeah, some consistencies here between what we're thinking she might be feeling. Okay, so look, I think we can broadly agree it's something pleasant. I don't know what she's feeling. She may well even not know what she's feeling. In fact, she probably doesn't. But what's interesting is that she's a little Syrian refugee girl. And if I go back into my share screen, we have a look, you can see that she's got kind of dirt under her chin, her clothes are quite ragged, her hair's a bit messy. So she's a Syrian refugee, she's in a camp in Lebanon, and she's surrounded by chaos. She's surrounded by misery, people who've seen and experienced all sort of traumatic things. But she's not there emotionally. She's somewhere else. You can see just from her, her face and her demeanor that she's elevated somewhere else emotionally. And what she's doing, you can see she's got a hand on her chest, is she's practicing a HeartMath technique called a heart lock-in. And what the heart lock-in is basically a way of connecting with a feeling of care or gratitude. And then when you're connected with that feeling, of breathing the feeling out to others and back into the self. So emotionally, she's not in that chaotic and traumatic environment, even though she's there physically. And so I show this slide really just to prove how powerful the techniques can be. That even in a situation like that hopefully none of us would ever find ourselves in a situation quite as stressful as that. But even in that type of situation, and even with a young child, it's possible to switch your emotional state and elevate yourself to a place that is frankly much better for you physically, mentally, and emotionally. Okay, so what is HeartMath then? Well, HeartMath's actually a brand name. It's a brand name for a system. Oops. Sorry, excuse me. Siri's talking to me. Thank you, Siri. I'll turn you off. There we go. Okay, so HeartMath is basically it's a system. It's a system of techniques including coherent breathing, which some of you may have heard referred to in other areas as resonance breathing or 0.1 Hertz breathing. It's a system that includes also focusing in the body, particularly focusing in the heart or the chest area. It also includes self-regulation, so self-awareness and then self-regulation of thoughts, feelings, behaviors. And it also includes a technology aspect. So that's the heart rate variability, coherence biofeedback. So HeartMath is a whole system and it's an intervention. And in terms of what some of the benefits are then of this system of self-awareness and self-regulation, it's basically a method for creating an optimal state. So the state's called coherence. It's a scientifically measurable state. I'll explain it to you as we progress through the webinar. So it's just a method for creating that state. You could think of it also as like a personal practice or a life skill or actually a philosophy. And the philosophy is that whilst we can't control a lot of what goes on around us in the world, actually we do have an opportunity to control how we respond in terms of our emotions and then our thoughts and our behaviors. It's something that's really quick and easy to do. Anyone can actually do it. And another way of thinking about it in terms of the biofeedback is that it's an objective measurement of what's otherwise a subjective experience. So you're doing something to yourself that you might not actually even be able to sense what's happening, but the technology will give you an objective measurement of that. And a bit of marketing you spin on all this, well, it is sort of a bit like mindfulness, depending what you mean by mindfulness, but it's a bit like mindfulness, but you can do it in the moment with your eyes open, even when you're experiencing extreme stress. It's a bit like aspects of positive psychology or CBT or kind of coaching techniques. And the technology is a bit like a Fitbit for your emotions. And it's all of those things rolled into one. In terms of the benefits that HeartMath delivers, well, it can significantly reduce stress in real time, eyes open in the moment. What it's enabling you to do when you get into the coherent state is to think logically, rationally, under pressure. So actually it is a way to get yourself into an emotionally intelligent place. So it's emotional intelligence on demand is another way of thinking about it. It's also another way of thinking about what's going on during a flow state, or when you might be in what you call the zone. So when we're in flow or zone, we tend to find that our cognitive performance is optimized. And that also has benefits to things like, focus and learning, our ability to communicate with clarity, our creativity or innovation, and also our ability to have, empathic feelings, perspective and intuition. So all of the higher kind of cortical functions, it's optimizing that. It's also a technique or method that enables you to reduce unnecessary drain, so the drain caused by stressful thoughts and feelings, and a way to intentionally increase your renewal, like top up your resilience battery, if you like, on both on all the mental, emotional and physical levels, and actually even the existential level. And another way of thinking about this is that what coherence does as a state is enable you to connect with the heart of who you really are. So your authentic self, your true self, your real self, the part of us that sometimes gets interfered with by everything that's going on around us in the world, and our stresses and our worries and our confusions. Coherence is a state that puts you back into the heart of who you really are and enables you to live from that place. Right, so let's have a look at the science. So one of the things about the HeartMath system is that it's validated by science. So a bit of physiological background behind all of this, first of all, for you. So that when we get stressed, in simple terms, it's a bit like the body and the brain sets off an alarm. Okay, and the purpose of the alarm, of course, is to keep us safe, either through fighting, running away, or playing dead. So we get stressed, doesn't matter whether the stress comes from, whether it's external or internal. So it could be a loud noise or a movement, or it could be a thought, a memory. What happens though is that the alarm goes off, and basically it impacts upon our autonomic nervous system. So the part of us, the automatic part of us that looks after everything we don't need to worry about, the bit of you that's currently, helping you digest and metabolize the dinner that you had, or get rid of the caffeine from the coffee that you had at 4 p.m, or regulating your body temperature, dilating and constricting your pupils, all those types of things, looking after circadian rhythms. So the autonomic nervous system is impacted upon first of all during stress, and it's like the foot goes on the accelerator. So adrenaline goes into the system and the heart rate increases. And that happens very quickly within about 2 seconds of being stressed. The next thing that happens is that this impacts upon the hormonal system. So when we get stressed, we produce a hormone called cortisol. I'm sure many of you have heard of cortisol before. You've probably heard of its nickname, which is the stress hormone. A bit unfair because there's actually nothing wrong with cortisol. We need it in our systems. But the problem is that when we experience stress, if it's not a real life-threatening stressor, and if we experience stress too frequently, then we can build up cortisol in our systems. We've got too much of it, basically. And that's a problem because cortisol is actually a catabolic steroid. So it breaks things down. And if we spend too long a period with too high levels of cortisol in our system, then it can begin to cause us problems for our health. So we age more quickly, and we can also be predisposed towards certain types of conditions and diseases. It's also a bit of a problem if we experience stress for too long, in that if we're creating cortisol because we're stressed, we're actually compromising our ability to produce another hormone called DHEA. And DHEA is nicknamed the vitality hormone, and it's actually an anabolic steroid. So DHEA is a really important hormone in our systems. It should be the most prolific system in the human being, and it's used to literally rebuild us on a cellular level. There's multiple purposes, but one of its jobs is to, literally revitalize and rebuild us. And the reason that we have lower levels of that if we're stressed for too long is that the chemical building blocks, something called pregnenolone, a pre-hormone, are taken to produce cortisol, and therefore they can't make adequate levels of DHEA. And so we don't want to find ourselves in a position where we're out of balance for too long, because it will significantly impact our health. Okay, so we get stressed, we get the adrenaline, and then we get the cortisol. And now what I want to do is to bring that to life for you, if you like, in terms of emotions and feelings. So this is one of the foundation models that we use in HeartMath. We don't go in for complex stuff. We like to keep it really simple. And so what this model shows you is on the vertical axis you've got your heart rate. So if you imagine right in the middle of the crosshair there, imagine that's your average heart rate. And as that line goes up, is your heart rate increasing. And then imagine as that line goes down, that's your heart rate decreasing, you're getting more relaxed. Okay, so that's the autonomic nervous system. And then on the horizontal, we've got the hormonal system. So we've got all the kind of stressful, unpleasant, depleting emotions and feelings on the left-hand side. They produce cortisol. And then on the right-hand side, we've got pleasant and renewing emotions and feelings. And they produce DHEA, other feel-good, do-good biochemicals, including oxytocin, which is often known as the hug drug or the love drug. And oxytocin, we tend to produce that, especially when we're feeling feelings of love and care, or when we're hugging. Around people that we love, we produce oxytocin. It's a useful biochemical to have in our systems because it helps us to buffer stress, so it increases our tolerance of stress. So we use this model to think about what feelings do to the autonomic nervous system and what the autonomic nervous system might do in terms of creating feelings. So this is all basically feedback loops. But what we're saying then is if you experience high heart rate and unpleasant feelings and emotions, then you could be experiencing some of these types of things. Okay, now there's 800 odd different feelings and emotions, so it's not only those, but typically in that box you would put feelings like anger, panic, fear, etc., that come with a higher heart rate. So they're activating us and they're producing cortisol. But not all stress comes with a high heart rate. In fact, after you've been in a period of stress with a high heart rate, often the body drops you down into a normal or even suppressed heart rate. I think that's where depression comes in. So feelings that have an average or even lower than average heart rate that are unpleasant or negative and that deplete us are those feelings like depression, worry, sadness, etc. Okay, so if we experience these types of feelings too much, we're activating our autonomic nervous system, and we're also activating the hormonal system, and we're producing too much cortisol. Now, that's not to say there's anything wrong with these types of feelings. They're life. We're not about suppressing any feelings with HeartMath. But what we recognize is that quite a lot of our experience of unpleasant feelings and emotions is unnecessary and unhelpful. So a simple example of that is if you are excessively worrying about coronavirus, that doesn't do you any good. It's nothing that you can control. In fact, the excessive worry is predisposing you towards autonomic states that might compromise your immune system. So actually, logically and rationally, it's not a good idea to worry too much at all. So that's what I mean is, a sensible amount of concern obviously is beneficial. We can do certain things like wear masks and wash hands and make sure that we don't, jump up on top of strangers and things like that. But there's many things that we can't control, and worrying about things too much is of zero value. Now, if we move over to this right-hand side, let's think about feelings and emotions that come with a normal heart rate, but they're positive. So they could be feelings and emotions like love, compassion, care, etc. Okay, so they create different autonomic nervous system state and a different hormonal state. We're getting extra DHEA, and particularly with the love and compassion and care, we may even be getting some extra levels of oxytocin, which would be beneficial. And then we've got in this top box here, these are the higher heart rate emotions and feelings, and that's feelings like joy and excitement, passion, exhilaration, etc. Okay, so this is a model that we use in a coaching process to help people identify the types of feelings that they have and the frequency and intensity of the feelings that they have, and then begin to work out, well, what would I like less of and what would I like more of? And then from that point of diagnosis, we can use this model to plan, well, how might we go about getting more of those right-hand side type feeling states? Okay, so the interesting thing about emotions is that emotions are very, very powerful drivers of our physiology and our thoughts and of our performance. So when we are experiencing unpleasant or negative feelings, what tends to happen to us is we go into that state of hormonal imbalance, so too much cortisol. Our heart rhythms go into chaos. That's important. I'll talk about that in a second. That causes varying degrees of cognitive shutdown based upon how stressed we are. And then that cognitive shutdown impacts upon our performance because it interferes with our behaviors. And then basically the opposite of all of that is true when we're experiencing pleasant and positive emotions. So naturally, the body tends to go into balance. Our heart rhythms go into balance or coherence. So they go into this lovely structured, ordered rhythm. The more and more pleasant the feelings are that we have, just happens naturally. We tend to be able to think much more clearly, and that then benefits our performance as well. So if we think, then we go back to this model that we used before, and we think about how those types of emotions might impact upon our behaviors. The top left-hand box type feelings, the anger, the high frustration, irritation, fear, panic, all of those types of feelings, they tend to drive behaviors like shouting, attacking, bullying, retaliating, lashing out, etc., and a lot of other behaviors. Okay, not particularly helpful behaviors. The feelings that live in the bottom left-hand box, so that's where the heart rate's normal or lower, but still unpleasant feelings, they tend to promote behaviors like withdrawing, or that sort of low-level worry, procrastination, kind of maybe criticizing self and others, or even just avoiding things. So those types of behaviors and plenty more. But then, of course, when we're experiencing more pleasant feelings and emotions, we behave very differently. And all of a sudden, when we're in that state, we tend to find that we're much better at empathizing with others. We're much, much better at communicating, particularly at listening in that space. We're much more caring. We're much more appreciative. And we notice things much more as well. And then when we're feeling the feelings that are in that top right-hand box with the higher heart rates, more engaged, kind of activated feelings, that's when we tend to be better at things like inspiring others and motivating, or celebrating, rewarding, laughing, all of those types of things, high-fiving, hugging, all that type of stuff. So that's how the behaviors are driven by the emotions as well, and kind of reinforced by the autonomic and hormonal states. So what HeartMath discovered basically was that the heart's rhythms were shifting with the emotions, and that was happening independent of the heart rate. So this was kind of nearly 30 years ago now, using the heart rate variability technology available at the time. We discovered that when you experience, broadly speaking, any of those left-hand side emotions, doesn't matter whether the heart rate's high or low, it could be terror, could be depression, what happens is that the heart rhythms become unstable and chaotic. So what you're seeing here, these aren't pulses, these aren't heartbeats. This is actually the rhythm of the heart speeding up and slowing down. So there's multiple heartbeats in here that are hidden. But what you can see is this acceleration and deceleration in the heart's rhythm that creates this incoherent or chaotic pattern. Okay, so that happens when you feel those feelings. Now that's important because what the heart rhythm is a window into the autonomic nervous system. And the autonomic nervous system is that bit of you that's looking after, 90-95% of everything you don't need to think about. And it's also the bit of you that's responsible for homeostasis, which is helping your body regulate itself back to balance, self-organize itself, renew itself. But when we're experiencing stress, we put the autonomic nervous system into this state of imbalance. And actually what you're seeing there visually is wear and tear. So the more stress you have, the longer the periods of time that your autonomic nervous system is out of balance, the more wear and tear that's being created. And if you then extend that over months and years, that's directly impacting on the speed with which you're aging, and it's also impacting upon your health. So if you spend a long period of time under stress, that's why you're much more likely to develop unfortunate health conditions. And what we know as well is that when we experience those pleasant, positive feelings and emotions, something different happens to the heart rhythms. So what you can see here is the heart rhythm trace. Lovely, smooth, sinusoidal rolling pattern of the autonomic nervous system in balance. So it's speeding up and it's slowing down, it's speeding up and it's slowing down. So if you were to consider these patterns in terms of driving a car, for example, if you were to drive your car for 6 months in that top pattern of accelerate, brake, accelerate, brake, accelerate, brake, 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 accelerate, brake, 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 you're going to create lots of wear and tear, and you're also going to burn a lot of fuel. Whereas if you can drive your car in that accelerate, brake, much more controlled, much more progressive. You're going to create much less wear and tear. And basically, human beings are exactly the same. In some ways, we're basically fleshy machines. And the way that we drive ourselves will impact upon wear and tear and the likelihood of things going wrong. So the good news is that whilst all of us will get stressed, and that's just life and reality, and it's normal and it's healthy actually, whilst we'll get stressed, if we can recognize that we're stressed and that the source of the stress is not threatening us in terms of our life, basically, then we can regulate what's going on in our autonomic nervous system, because it's one of the parts of our unconscious system that we can consciously control. So what we're doing is we're using initially focus in the body, particularly the heart area, and the breath to switch the behavior of the autonomic nervous system. We hack in, we use the breath, we breathe in a nice, smooth, balanced way, and that begins to create this order and stability in the heart's rhythms. So what that is called is coherent breathing, and what it creates is coherence within your body and brain. And coherence basically means ordered patterning within a system. So the heart's a system. You can intentionally put it into a coherent state of ordered patterning. The heart's also the largest rhythm maker in the body. So the rest of the brain and the body will follow its beat. It's the largest rhythm maker. Whatever rhythm it taps out, incoherent or coherent, the rest of the brain and body will follow it. But in coherence, the other systems and processes will synchronize. So I've used the metaphor here of the rowing boat. So imagine the cox is like the heartbeat. The beat that the cock starts beating out will then be followed by all the other systems. So all the other rowers represent the other systems. And then basically they are all operating in synchronization. So that's what's happening with the other bodies in the human. Coherence also obviously means the quality of forming a unified whole. Well, what happens there then is all the systems in the body form a unified whole in the same way that the rowers in a boat form a unified whole operating together. And coherence also means, in lay speak, obviously the quality of being logical and consistent, or clarity of communication. But that's important because what's happening then when the brain and the heart are communicating with each other is that there's a lot more information that's going from heart to brain than brain to heart, which most people don't realize or appreciate. We think the brain's in control, but actually it isn't. This is all a system. It all operates together. There's multiple complex feedback loops, and actually there is more information that's going in an ascending direction, afferent direction, than descending, and the heart is sending about 5 times more information to the brain than the brain is sending to the heart. There's about 8 or 9 times more information from the whole of the body and the heart than the other way around. The types of communication are neurological. So you've got the vagus nerve. You've also got a cluster of neurons on the heart that qualifies a little brain. There's a whole field of study called neurocardiology. The heart's biochemical, so it releases hormones, oxytocin, atrial peptide. So hormones are a form of communication. The heart's energetic, so every time it beats, it sends a pulse wave that goes throughout the system, which is a form of communication. And the heart as well is electromagnetic, so it sends an electromagnetic throughout the whole of the body and the brain, which is sensed by every cell. And that electromagnetic signal actually even goes out into the environment. We can measure that outside of ourselves. We can if we buy a very expensive piece of equipment called a squid magnetometer. So the heart's always sending information, and the nature of those signals are especially important when it comes to the brain centers that are responsible for emotional experience, self-regulation, and decision-making. So basically, the amygdala and stress centers and the prefrontal cortex. So what happens then when we experience these different emotional states? This isn't linear. It looks like it is. It's a bit of an oversimplification, but in effect, what's happening, or one of the things that happens, you experience stress, unpleasant feeling or emotion, the heart rhythms become chaotic. Remember, this information is stronger in an afferent direction, ascending direction, than descending. So this impacts upon the brain. In effect, what happens is the brain receives the information and says, oh, I'm feeling chaotic information coming at me, so there must be a threat. I need to remain vigilant. So that increases activity in the amygdala. So that means that we're in the fight, flight, freeze mode. Now, if you increase activity in that part of the brain, you've got to take it from somewhere else. Where's that? It's the prefrontal cortex. So the more stressed you get, the more activity is taken from the prefrontal cortex. Now, that's fine if your life's in danger. You don't need your prefrontal cortex. You just need to fight, run away, or play dead. But most of the stress that we experience, of course, is not putting our lives in danger. And most of the stress that we experience requires us to be logical, rational, to use complex behaviors, to engage in sophisticated ways, to work out how to interact with others in complex ways. And that bit of the brain's gone offline, basically, the more stressed you are. It's a bit like a lobotomy. It's okay if we get stressed. Like I said, it's going to happen. But if we can recognize in that small window, I'm getting stressed now and this is not going to help me, we have an opportunity then to switch what's going on in the autonomic nervous system. And with practice, you can do that literally within a breath. So you can get out of a stress reaction and into a more coherent state within a breath. And then we create this more ordered, structured rhythm and pattern that goes up to the brain. In effect, the brain interprets that as order, stability. I must be safe, so therefore I don't need the amygdala anymore. And then the prefrontal cortex can come back online again. So now we can think much more clearly, creatively, empathetically, much more sophisticated ways. I mean, that's the bit that the human being part of us resides in. The other benefit of the coherent state is that it basically puts you in a place where life can be very different for you and very positive for you. So coherence is a state that enables us to be and act more authentically. It literally is putting us in touch with the heart of who we really are. So it puts us in a place where we're authentic. It puts us in a place where we're connected. Literally, our systems are connected, but we feel more connected with life and with others. So it benefits pro-social behavior and relationships. It's putting us in a place of balance, benefiting homeostasis. So the autonomic nervous system is balanced. It's putting us in a state where we feel more present, calm but alert. It benefits us in terms of some of the intuitive information that's available to us from our bodies. And actually, if you practice this stuff regularly, my own personal experience is, it means you're a bit happier and a bit healthier than when you're not practicing these techniques as well. Or actually, with practice, a lot happier and a lot healthier. So that's a bit of an introduction. Before I launch into the biofeedback stuff and explain the part that that plays in a system, I thought I'd come back to you and see what questions you might have about any of that or anything that's popping up for you. So if you've got a question, feel free to just pop yourself off mute and ask away. Piers has got one. Hello, Piers.
Yeah, Gavin.
Piers, I can't hear you.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Oh, I'll say again, sorry.
Yeah.
Now I've got you.
Yeah. Sorry. It's actually just a bit of an audio interference statement, Gavin. We've got somebody who's eating, I think. It might be Stephen, but his microphone was unmuted. So I just wonder if next time we could it's quite a lot of background noise of eating from a plate or something. So perhaps he could mute himself, or you could mute us all if you're presenting. That'd be super helpful.
Sorry, I didn't even hear that for some reason.
Yeah, so I tried to jump in, but I think somehow I wasn't heard.
I think I may even have had my volume down actually, which is why I didn't hear. Guys, I apologize for that. I'll make sure that I'm on top of the muting. And please pop yourselves on mute. It looks like everyone is.
And I've got a question.
Please fire away.
So I'm interested in the red and the green heart rates and how sort of really vigorous exercise or super excitement, or how does that correlate across those two, harmful, less harmful? What would a heart rate rhythm of somebody who's doing a spin session look like, for example? So they're super pumped up, they're really excited.
Yeah.
Heart rate's probably flying along.
Yeah.
And yet I would guess they're not necessary. Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to sort of understand how that would all work.
So basically, high heart rates impact upon heart rate variability, and you have much less of it with a high heart rate. So you're not going to see coherence in a high heart rate. That's not to say it's not there, but it will look relatively flat. You can still have it, especially if that person is particularly regulating their breathing and if they're feeling really good with what they're doing. But actually, coherence during vigorous exercise is not really an appropriate state. It's something that is appropriate though when you stop the exercise. And then you want to go back into a coherent state as soon as possible. So the heart rate comes down, and then you want to go into the coherent state, and that's going to facilitate the recovery and renewal.
Thank you.
Yeah. Other questions from folk? Ask away.
I had more scientific question.
Please do.
So actually, if you look at the data, you can actually predict, when I have my HRV data, the state of the emotions the person was, and that's quite valid and reliable.
Well,
and vice versa.
Well, if we put one of our inner balances on your M waves on you, and we see that your heart rhythms are unstable, then yes, an indication that emotionally you are experiencing more of those negative states, anxiety, nervousness. Now, our technology is not for like specifically diagnosing your emotion, but actually we can do that. We can recognize certain patterns, and we know that anxiety looks more like that, and depression looks more like that, and love looks more like smooth pattern with a lower heart rate, and joy looks like a smoother pattern but with a higher heart rate. So it's possible to kind of like broadly place emotions with regards to the nature of the HRV waveform, but that is certainly not a perfect science.
I was curious.
Yeah.
It's very, very exciting.
Yeah, but actually, when I talk about biofeedback, what you'll see is we're not interested in diagnosing anything with our technology. What we're interested in is using the biofeedback to help you learn how to get coherent. That's what we're measuring.
I got that, but I was wondering, you must have tons of data, right?
Yeah, so tons.
Yeah, that's why it is interesting.
Yeah, anyway. Yeah. So if working with a coach here, I can see a pattern, and I can tell that they're anxious, or they've got an anxiety disorder or depression. For example. So yeah. Any more for any more? Okay. Okay, so let me go back into my screen. Great. So a bit about the biofeedback then. So what the biofeedback is doing is it's not doing anything to you. Okay, so our technology isn't about zapping your vagus nerve or stimulating your brain or anything like that. It's passive. And what it's doing is it's just giving you feedback on what you're doing to yourself. So it's validating and it's measuring your ability to get coherent. And the benefit of that is that you by practicing the breathing, like maybe practicing deepening it, slowing it to a different rate, practicing different feelings, that you then get information back that shows you the impact on your coherence. And then also the impact of the technology, that it helps you build a habit, and it helps you to hardwire that as a skill as well. So specifically what it's teaching you to do then is to synchronize your breathing with your heart rate, and then that will improve your baroreflex. And the benefits of doing that are multiple. So that can increase your HRV amplitude immediately, because generally most people breathe too rapidly and too shallowly, so they don't have enough HRV, and then that means they're not exercising it optimally, basically. So it can compromise your HRV over time if you're a rapid, shallow breather. So you can improve that in real time, but also then with practice, it will show you that you can increase your amplitude, your baseline amplitude over the long term, because basically you're exercising it. It also improves your vagal activity. So that reduces your stress and it improves your mood. It improves your autonomic nervous function, because you're balancing the branches of the autonomic nervous system. And then because you're doing that and you're reducing stress, it means that you can reduce your inflammation, because stress and cortisol increase inflammation, and stress increases perception of pain too. It reduces high blood pressure, because we're bringing in more parasympathetic activity, or at least in balance with sympathetic. It's improving the gaseous exchange when you're breathing coherently, so the CO2 homeostasis is improved. there's research to show that this type of breathing benefits you if you have asthma or emphysema, COPD, and then improvements in terms of cognition and self-regulation as well. So there's some of the research benefits. This is from a meta-analysis by a couple of authors, not HeartMath. This is independent research. And so our HRV biofeedback, which is called, well, there's two devices. There's the Inner Balance and the M-Wave Pro. The Inner Balance is specifically for kind of members of the public or coachees, and the purpose is that it's giving you personal coherence biofeedback, and it does that through data screens, but you've also got breath pacers which enable you to use different breath rates to pace your breathing and achieve optimal coherence. And then that's basically helping you to learn. It's helping you to measure yourself over time and measure your development, and therefore helps you to improve your ability to get coherent on demand and to sustain it at ever higher levels. So the Inner Balance does that, and then it also tracks your progress over time. So as you do more and more sessions, you begin to build up data, and then it becomes a bit more meaningful in terms of your progression. So you can track things like the amount of time that you're practicing for. You can track your achievement level. So you begin to see, you'll see over time that increases, but then you'll see it tends to sort of plateau, and you have a range, an upper range and a lower range. Most of the time you're in the middle of that, but then sometimes you'll pop above it. There's always a reason, generally that you've had a great day or two and you're feeling good and feeling happy, and then sometimes you pop at the bottom of it. It tends to be the opposite type of day. Or you can also begin to even correlate things like certain types of foods that you've eaten, drink, alcohol, lack of sleep. You begin to build up patterns over time that show you certain lifestyle impacts on your ability to get coherent. So for me, one of the things I learned when I was practicing and I began to gather data was that, unfortunately, whilst I love curry doesn't really love me, and I tend to get low HRV the next day, and I struggle to get coherent or as coherent, and unfortunately alcohol does the same thing. So unfortunately, some of life's good stuff is not too good for you, but look, everything in moderation. So you begin to see some trends, and they become more meaningful. You can also, if you like, this gamification, so you get awards for certain types of achievements, points, etc. There's another system where you can actually even compete with other people if you want. And then within the app, there's also lots of other functionality. So there's all the training videos within the app itself. There's also some guided heart meditations, and there's also some talks and guides, and an access to a HeartMath e-learning program as well. So there's quite a lot of stuff in there. And then there's actually another app that you can use with the biofeedback sensor, which is called the Global Coherence app. Now that's primarily designed actually for group meditations. So we run large-scale group meditations. You can also host your own private meditations, but we also use this for group coaching practice. So you can create a private small group, and then the group can practice together. Each person can see their individual coherence. Other people can't see that other people's individual coherence. You can only see your own, but you do all get to see the average coherence level of the group. So this is something that's great to use for, you know, team development, team performance, kind of team bonding, is getting people practicing the techniques like feeling care and appreciation for each other, and then actually seeing the evidence of their combined coherence and seeing that improve over time. So that's a pretty cool app that you can use in group coaching. The other HeartMath biofeedback system is called the M-Wave Pro, and this is the system that you would use as a coach, and then you can track your client's commitment because you can see if they're doing it or not. So it provides accountability, and you can also track their progress over time. So just a couple of examples here of how that looks. So this is a coachee that I've been working with. And you can see this is actually over the course of, well, it's just over 3 weeks, 24 days worth of activity. So I can see how frequently he's been practicing. I could actually tap on each one of these and I could see how long he was practicing for. I can see all of the different sessions. I can drill down into them. But what you can see, if you take this blue line from the right-hand side, you can see that it's clearly trending upwards. And actually the final third is twice as high as the first third. So what we're seeing there is this person's ability to achieve an increasingly high level of average coherence over time. So that's objective proof of skill acquisition. Now, we can drill also down into each session. So this is one of the early sessions, and this is my coachee practicing coherence to begin with. And you can see it isn't particularly coherent. I mean, it's not as jerky as if he wasn't practicing it, but there's not a lot there. And it's actually pretty flat. There's not a lot of variability either. The waveforms are all quite flat. But then if we look at him 3 weeks later, look at that. That is just beautiful levels of coherence. So this is objective proof of a skills acquisition, and actually that he's seriously developed his ability to get and stay coherent over a decent amount of time. So the whole session here is 10 minutes. This is 4 minutes worth that you can see. Well, that whole time he's got a very high level of coherency. And the N-Wave Pro as well, just to let you know, also includes some games and visualizers, and also a system where you can put photos in so you can watch a screen show whilst practicing as well. So let me just stop there. So that's a brief introduction to the biofeedback technology and what it does. What questions have you got about that? Just pop yourself off mute if there's anything that you'd like to ask about the biofeedback tech, what it does, what it measures.
Hi, Gavin.
Hey, Kate.
Hey, so that sounds super amazing, what you were talking about, being able to use that in a group coaching situation. So how would that work then? So if I've got different clients in different cities, everybody needs to download this app.
Yep.
And then, so can you go through the process?
Yeah, so basically, yeah, it doesn't matter whether you're in a physical location together or if you're distributed around the world. That's a nice thing about this. Everybody would need to download the app, and everybody would need the inner balance sensor. But then you could, via Zoom, you could all be in the Zoom room, and then you could be leading the coaching. Say, right, okay, so everybody put your devices on, open the app. You've created a private room for everyone, so no one else can see the data. That's all kept secure. And then you could lead the group through technique practice. You could get them to practice whilst you were going through one of your own coaching exercises, or perhaps whilst they were trying to come up with a solution to a problem or resolve a conflict or something like that. So you'd be getting the data all of the time. So you as the coach, you'd see all of that as well. You'd be able to see all of that information and then feed back to them. So I mean, I've used this with HSBC a couple of times and had them all kind of hooked up, and the clients find it amazing as well. It's really cool. It's cool to see your own HRV data. It's cool to see your own coherence when you're practicing, but then it's really cool to see what people can achieve collectively.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, let's see if we can get above 3 together, because that's a really good level of coherence. And if we can do that collectively, that means the group physiologically and mentally is in a space of optimal performance. So that's the space where the group can make the best decisions.
Yeah.
Because you're all in the prefrontal cortex. There's not a high level of stress in a group where you might do or say something stupid or make a crazy business decision, like, I don't know, concealing your diesel emission figures or whatever. Not to pick on Volkswagen, but it's like, why do businesses make stupid decisions? Largely because they're stressed and they're panicking about stuff, and they want to make their figures look better. So it is a cool application. Very cool.
Is it possible just to go back to your previous screen where you were showing the graph of the client that made the great progress?
Yeah, hang on a sec.
On the first slide, before, when it was all a bit haywire.
Hang on a sec. Yeah, this one.
Right, so I'm quite new to this whole thing still. So I've only so when you say that that's showing his progress, is that
this is in a session. So this is him over 4 minutes practicing, like for the first time, practicing the coherence techniques.
Okay.
And so anywhere where you see a kind of smoothish cycle, he's getting a bit of coherence.
Okay.
And then with practice, when you learn how to do this and you get a sense for it and you use the biofeedback to work out what works for you, that's when you can completely radically change the heart rhythms here, and you can just see how different that is. I mean, they're much taller, there's more amplitude, there's more variability, but there's more stability in that coherency, and he's got these lovely repeating cycles. And that then, you know, remember, physiologically is information that the rest of the body and the brain is syncing up with and receiving, particularly with the brain putting you back into a state of balance and back in the prefrontal cortex.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much. Okay.
Who are the target customer here? Are there
anyone? Yeah, I mean, we train all sorts of people. We train, so in terms of coaches, we train, business coaches, life coaches, sports coaches, but we also train medical professionals. We train psychotherapists, CBT therapists. We train nutrition therapists. It's anybody that wants to help their client learn how to self-regulate stress. And it could, in that regard, it can be like a foundation for any other form of intervention.
Okay, let me rephrase it. The end user, I was talking about the end user, the client. Who are the other way around? Other clients, because it's an intervention. It's a device which you have to clip on the ear labs. Other clients who are not suitable for that, or the other end, who are the best clients?
Well, the only clients who aren't suitable are anyone that doesn't like technology, because obviously they're not going to be interested in it. Some people are stressed by technology, so I'd say it's a waste of time. But in terms of anyone who can't use it, then really the only people that can't use it are people who've got a permanent arrhythmia. So if they've got a heart arrhythmia, their heart's in chaos anyway, basically. So the technology is going to be pointless. If it's a permanent, if it's episodic, then so long as they don't have the arrhythmia, then the technology will be very useful. If someone's got a permanent pacemaker, it's pointless. But actually the techniques are beneficial for everyone, because it's the techniques that are making the change to the physiology and to your ability to think clearly. So, I know people who have arrhythmias, they don't use our technology, but they use our techniques, because if you can manage the stress in your life, then that can only benefit you. I actually know people with episodic arrhythmias who, when they feel an arrhythmia coming on, can practice coherence and they can nip it in the bud. So, really the end user of the techniques is anyone. The end user of the techniques and the technology is people who are interested in technology and like gadgets and like validation.
And the other thing is there, how easy is it to apply? So could there be artifacts through people who haven't applied it correctly? Or
it's pretty decent. I mean, it's got a clippy thing that goes on the earlobe. This is not designed to be worn whilst you're moving around vigorously. It's designed for either seated practice, you could be emailing or in a meeting or whatever, or a gentle walk, but it's not designed, it's too sensitive for vigorous movement. You will get all sorts of artifacts then. But if you're seated and not moving, not yanking your head around too much, then you're not going to get any artifacts. Okay. All right. So should we practice some techniques together? Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to teach you 3 techniques, and then I'll give you some final information about being a coach. So let's go back in. Okay, so the first technique we're going to practice is called heart-focused breathing. It's the foundation technique. It's really simple. So what you're doing, this technique is designed to be used anytime. So it's eyes open in the moment, any situation you're in at all. And the idea is that you're first of all focusing your attention in the area of the heart. And then what you're doing, you can put your hand on your heart to help place your focus there if you're not particularly adept at putting focus in the body, which many people aren't. So attention goes in the area of the heart or the chest. And then what you're doing is you're imagining that the breath's flowing in and out of the heart or the chest, and you're breathing a bit slower and deeper than you usually would. Okay. So in terms of some tips around that, then with the breathing, make the breath balanced. So start with 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out. In fact, I'm going to play you a breath pacer for 3 minutes, which will pace you at 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out. So try and run with that. But if you find it really uncomfortable, stop looking at it. And then if you need to speed the breath up a bit or slow it down, then do that. But try the 5 in, 5 out to begin with for a while. It could be 30 seconds or so before you give up. Please breathe through your nose unless you've got a cold. Make sure that the belly's relaxed. So we want the diaphragm to be able to move fully. So make sure the belly's relaxed. And then as you're breathing, make sure that the breath is kind of as smooth and sustained as possible. So the same volume on the in-breath as the out-breath. So what I'd like you to do is start up this breath pacer. So this is going to pace you at a 5-second expansion and a 5-second contraction. So get the focus in the heart or the chest. Relax the belly, remember. Breathe through the nose. And then in your own time, just try and sync up with this pacer so that you breathe in through your nose as the pacer expands. This nice pretty mandala expands. And breathe out through the nose as it contracts. Okay. Okay, so keep that going. And then if you notice any tension in the body, particularly in the belly, just work at letting that go. And try to imagine now that the breath's flowing in and out of the heart or the chest. I mean, I know it can't literally, okay, so it really is just a matter of kind of imagining that it's coming in and out of that part of the body, just focusing attention there. Okay, last 20 seconds. Okay, so that's called heart focused breathing. Now, if you were connected to one of our biofeedback systems, if you're connected to the M-Wave Pro, this is what you would have seen happening to your heart rhythm. So when we go into this type of breathing, what happens very quickly is that the breath and the heart rate sync up. They're not normally synchronized like this. So what happens when you breathe in, the heart rate increases. So that's where you see the line going up. So right now what's happening is you're breathing in, heart rate's increasing, and then you're breathing out, heart rate's decreasing. And as you keep doing that, you create these cycles, these oscillations, and it's this pattern, this rhythm, that's then going in terms of the heart rhythm, in terms of the electromagnetic activity, in terms of the pulse activity, in terms of the neurological activity, and that's impacting on the brain. And it's basically sending this message saying there's order, there's stability, there's safety. And so that's how then the stress centers deactivate and the prefrontal cortex then comes back online again. So that's what you would see. Well, I mean, that's very coherent. So with practice, that's what you'd see. Okay. So that heart-focused breathing technique, then what's it doing? It's creating coherence very, very quickly. It's balancing your autonomic nervous system, as evidenced through what the heart rhythm's doing, and it's activating the prefrontal cortex. So it's significantly reducing or even stopping the stress reaction, and that includes the adrenaline that you'd be producing and the cortisol that you'd be producing, so they'd be nipped in the bud. It shifts you from negative emotion, like a anxiety or worry, into a kind of more neutral emotional space. So it's reducing the intensity of the emotion, the negative emotion. And actually, as soon as you can do that, it's reducing wear and tear. So it's taking you out of an allostatic state and it's promoting homeostasis, which is where the body can then rebalance and repair itself. So very, very, profound impact of a very simple technique. And when to use it? Well, actually, just whenever you feel yourself stressed, it can only benefit you. And actually, for most of the day, we've got to breathe anyway. And whilst there is no single correct way to breathe, and there's lots of wonderful breath techniques, and I view them kind of like exercise, really, they do different things. But actually, for most of what you're doing throughout the day, as you're sat here listening to me, this is the optimal way to breathe. And here's a nice little example of someone using this in action. Now, this information was caught by accident. So this is one of our coaches. She's a director of a construction company, board director. And one of her responsibilities is responding to emergencies. And so what was happening is that she was just sat at her computer. So every morning she likes to go into work. She turns on, because it's on the computer, she uses the M-Wave Pro. She puts it on her ear. She starts practicing her coherence, and then she goes into her emails. So what she normally does, she answers her emails, and every now and again she comes out of her emails and looks at her HRV data to see how coherent she was when she was emailing, or if a certain email might have triggered her in a certain way, or whatever. So anyway, she does it every day. She's got tons of data. This day, something unusual happened in that while she was practicing, her phone rang and the person on the other end of the phone said, one of our construction drivers has had an accident and has run over and killed a pedestrian. We've got to deal with the situation. Well, that's her job. So this has come at her out of the blue. You can see her heart rate increases and it becomes chaotic, incoherent. She's stressed. Of course she's stressed. She wasn't expecting this. It's an awful thing to have to deal with as well. But what she realizes is, this is like a minute and a half of telephone conversation. She then realizes, I have got to deal with this. This is my job. So the little voice in her head says, get coherent. So she basically starts coherent breathing practice. You can see here 3 beautiful coherent breaths. And then she stops and she goes and deals with the situation. And I know her very, very well. She said to me, I'm really proud of the way I dealt with it. I hope I never have to deal with anything like that ever again, but I did the best job that I could have done, and I'm proud of myself. So it's just a lovely example of how these techniques, if you practice them and if you kind of like strengthen the muscle, they're available to you even under very, very stressful situations. Okay, so that's called heart-focused breathing. Simple, everyone can breathe, and more people should breathe like that more often. So what we'll do now is what's called a quick coherence. So we can use quick coherence to regulate our emotions. So what we're going to do is we're going to practice a technique. Actually, we'll just do one, but we'll practice a technique that will intentionally put us in this bottom right-hand box. So we're going to get coherent, but we're also, if we can tap into the feelings, it's going to give us some DHEA. And if we're really lucky, we might even get some oxytocin. Okay. So for this one, I'm not going to pace you. What you're going to do, you're going to start with the heart-focused breathing. So exactly the same as we did before, focus in the heart, imagine the breath's flowing. And then, and I'll talk you through this again in a sec, don't worry, we're going to make a sincere attempt to experience a more regenerative feeling. So something like care, appreciation, gratitude, something like that. Care, appreciation, or gratitude for someone or something in your life. And then what we're going to do, once you've got that feeling, we're going to breathe them in and out with each breath. So get yourselves comfortable. We'll do this just for a couple of minutes. You can look at my nice picture, or you can, if you prefer, you can close your eyes, up to you. So first thing is we're going to shift our attention down into the heart or the chest area. Take a couple of nice, deep, comfortable breaths at your rate. Okay, so now get the breath nice and smooth and balanced. Try that kind of 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, or what's most comfortable for you, but try and make the breath balanced. That's really important with creating coherence. Okay. And now what I want you to do is just to recall someone or something for which you feel genuine care, appreciation, or gratitude. Doesn't matter what it is, could be a person or a place or a memory. You could even just look at the picture if you like and appreciate the sunset. So now that you've got something, I just want you to breathe the feelings of the care, appreciation, or gratitude in and out with the breath. And we just do that for a couple of minutes and I'll let you know when we're ready to move on. Okay. How was that? Some of you looking pretty relaxed. To what extent could you connect with a feeling? Nod or shake heads. Yes, no. Yeah, some of you. Okay. So some of you will have been able to do it relatively easily. Some of you might have struggled. You know, like all things, these things can take practice, but what we're exercising there is our ability to choose our emotions. So most people think emotions are just reactions. Well, a lot of the time they are reactions, but actually emotions are choices. And if we decide that we want to focus on something that we appreciate or care for, or that is an exciting memory or joyful or whatever, we can do that. And if we do that, then actually not only can we get ourselves more coherent, because it's something about the positive emotions that excite the system at its resonant frequency. We don't properly understand it, but it adds to the level of coherence. But you can also begin to shift your hormonal balance. So you start to actually intentionally create DHEA in the system, extra DHEA. If you really felt some feelings of care there, love, you actually would have also released some oxytocin. So again, you know, you stop your average medical professional, they say you can't control your hormone levels, you can't control your heart rhythms. Yes, we can actually. We can do that. And if you practice it regularly, you can have a profound impact on your hormonal levels. Okay, ready for one more? This is a kind of practical way of using coherence to solve problems. Okay, so this is called a freeze frame technique. Okay. Oh, sorry. So just to reiterate what that one's doing. So it's getting you, it does all the stuff that the heart focused breathing technique does. Okay. And then it's increasing activity in the cortex even more. It's kind of nudging you towards this flow state or zone state. So it's a great thing to do in order to if you need to perform. And as I mentioned then as well, you're releasing some other feel good, do good hormones. And then in terms of when to use this one, well, actually it's a great technique to use quickly before or even during, and then especially after challenging or stressful events. And actually, it'd be a great technique to do before every coaching session as a lead in. In fact, I would suggest that you do that with your coachee for a couple of minutes. So you do it together and then you move into the coaching session. It's just a great foundation to start from. Okay. I'm going to move on from that. Okay, so let's see how we can use coherence to solve problems then. So what I need you to do, first of all, actually, let me come back to you quickly. I need everyone to have a think about something that's going on in life at the moment that's causing you broadly stress. So too much worry, too much challenge, concern, frustration, irritation, anger, anything at all that's going on in life at the moment that is broadly causing you to experience an unpleasant feeling, emotion, thoughts, etc. I'm assuming that you have something, even if you're lucky enough that it's not necessarily significant. Okay. If you don't have anything, wow, you're lucky. And I'll just talk you through the process, but I'm sure most people have got something that they could apply it to. So first thing then, when you kind of think about that situation, the issue, whatever it is, doesn't matter. I don't need to know stories. What do you notice in terms of like attitudes that you might have about it? Feelings that you might have about it, any self-talk, any kind of physiological stuff that's going on, tensions or whatever, just sort of make a mental note to yourself when you connect with it, like what's going on. You know, it might just be this, like, it's just frustration, it's just, or it's anger, or it's irritation, or it's like, oh, not in my stomach. But I just want you to get a sense of what it is when you connect with it. Okay, so let me lead you through the technique now, and I'll pop up another nice sunset, but equally you might want to close your eyes with this one to get a little bit deeper. You can do this with eyes open, but you might want to close your eyes. So we start with the heart focused breathing, so sit nice and comfortably, place your attention in the heart or the chest area, start that breathing going nicely and deeply and comfortably. Try and get that nice balance. We can do this for about another 30 seconds or so, just the breathing. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to shift the emotion. So just recall, again, that feeling of care, appreciation, gratitude for someone or something in your life. And then when you've got that feeling of care, appreciation, or gratitude, just breathe the feeling in and out with the breath. We're going to do that for a couple of minutes. So just breathe the feeling. Okay, so keep the breathing going, keep the feeling going. And now I just want you to ask yourself from this more objective place, what would be a more efficient or effective action, attitude, or solution? Don't rush it. So just stay connected in the heart, keep the breathing going. Just ask yourself from this more objective place, what would be a more efficient or effective action, attitude, or solution? Okay, so now just sense any subtle change that there might be in an attitude or your perception, any thoughts, feelings, or anything like that. And then maybe a couple of you, no one needs to tell me the story or anything like that, but maybe one or two of you would mind just telling me what you notice from your perspective, from the first perspective to the second perspective. I don't need to hear the stories, like I said, I'm just interested to know is what might have changed for you. Who wouldn't mind sharing? Anyone?
Happy to share, Gavin.
Thanks, Shirley.
I've gone from frustration and disappointment to feeling more forgiving of myself, and more, I suppose, more willing to accept what happened without wanting to run away from it.
Lovely, wonderful. Thank you. Thanks. So quite a different perspective. That's okay. This is what we're looking for, is a less draining, less depleting, less helpful, shifting to something that's more helpful, less draining, more renewing. Okay, lovely. Thank you. Piers, you are going to volunteer something, I think. Thank you.
Yes, more. So it's kind of administrative tasks that are getting overwhelming, but there's with just a short bit of practice, it almost felt like there's an objectivity or a distance. So less of the kind of about it and more of a okay. Yeah, just that sort of expansion or distance. Yeah.
Great.
Very subtle but noticeable.
Yeah. Good. I mean, look, that was 4 minutes, that technique. So what we're looking for is just, even if it's subtle or just a small kind of shift, it's beneficial. I mean, you could do it for longer, obviously, on a bigger issue. So yeah, it's a nice little technique, freeze frame. The idea is we're freezing the frame on the movie that's playing out, and then we get coherent and we sort of change our ability to look at the scene from different directions. And then when we're coherent, the story can play out slightly differently. So another one to have a little play with that one over the next week or so and apply it to different situations. You can use it as a problem solving technique as well. Creativity tool. So that's the freeze frame. So there you go. You've got half focus breathing, easy. Anyone can do that. You've got the quick coherence, that's shifting into the positive emotional state. Many of you could do that quickly. Type of thing that with practice becomes much easier as well, and you can build up like a portfolio of different positive things that you can recall. You can even just go about your day and notice, like today I did one because the sun was beautiful and the leaves on the trees were looking amazing, and I just did a quick coherence, like, wow, that looks beautiful, it's awesome. And then the last one that we've just done there is the freeze frame technique, which you can apply to problems or for creativity. Simple. Okay, let me just share the steps there. So first thing you do, you acknowledge the problem and any issues or feelings. Then what you do is basically heart focused breathing. Then you do a quick coherence. Okay, so you bring in the feeling, and then you sit with it for a little while, and then you just gently ask yourself, well, what would be a more efficient or effective action, attitude, or solution? And you just try and stay in the heart, don't rush it, and just see what pops up. Okay, and then you're observing those changes, and actually you're then saying to yourself, right, I'm going to commit to sustaining this shift, this new belief, or taking this action. Okay. Just to let you know, you might need to freeze frame some issues a few times. Okay, they can be a little bit hardwired in, but each time you do it, you get another nudge along. So, final slides. Why should you add HeartMath to your coaching? Like professionally, as in training with us, basically. So there's a number of reasons. First of all, this stuff's really simple to do, but it's highly practical. And I think at the moment, a lot of people, they're just so overwhelmed. They've got so much going on. They're so kind of like cognitively loaded. They can't take complex stuff. But actually, this stuff is beautifully simple and people can do it and they feel some benefits very quickly as well. It is scientific. It is credible. You know, we're measuring something real. And so that measurable and objectivity side of it means that it's accountable as well. And it also appeals to some of those people who are perhaps, you know, dismissive of things like mindfulness or breath work or whatever. And it's, oh, you know, please don't tell me to breathe deeply and go to my happy place. You know, my life is far too complex for that to be effective. Well, what we're doing here is we're giving them something a bit different with a bit of technology, and then all of a sudden those types of people can become interested because, you know, a gadget says that it's real. Of course, you know, adding this as a tool to what you do differentiates you from others, and you know, it can be pretty competitive out there. So anything that differentiates you is great as well. My personal experience is that, you know, I trained as a coach a long time ago, but when I trained in the HeartMath stuff and I became coherent as a coach, I know it made me a better coach. And that actually, you know, all of the kind of tools and models and things that I learned as a coach, when you're coherent, it just flows and you don't really need to think about those things and those processes. And it just really benefits the relationship as well with the client. So it will make you a better coach if you practice this stuff yourself. And if you practice it with your clients and you teach them this as well, they are going to get better results when they're coherent. And the main reason for that actually is because when they're coherent, they are connected with the heart of who they really are. So they're doing work from the baseline of authentic self instead of the shoulding and like, oh, I think this is my goal and I want that. And as we know as coaches, a lot of the time what clients think are their goals are not necessarily, when they achieve them, what they really wanted. And the other reason is this stuff just works. I'm hoping that these 3 techniques this evening have proved to you that it works. And actually, I think, you know, with the state of the world at the moment, there is a lot of chaos out there. And it's hurting a lot of people. We're seeing information about a tsunami of mental and physical health problems coming down the line as a result of what's going on in the world at the moment. And so I think people need these tools, and the more we can help people sustain balance through being coherent, then the better. So you'll be providing a real beneficial service to people. So if you should wish to become a certified coach with us, then basically in order to do that, it's a 3-stage journey. So stage 1 is we send you the biofeedback technology, so you get both the M-Wave Pro and the Inner Balance, and they're worth the princely sum of £458. We also send you a little bit of e-learning, nothing much, it's only about an hour and a quarter's worth of e-learning. We also send you a nice book to read, and we ask you to engage in biofeedback practice with the stuff we've sent you, and then we monitor you, and you get 1 onboarding coaching session before you then go into stage 2, which is 3 days of live training. So we're doing that on Zoom at the moment, and that's training in the HeartMath system. So it's the science, it's the technology, and it's the system of the techniques and the models and tools that we use. So that's what you do over the 3 days. And in stage 3 is after that, you then get 3 more 1-hour coaching sessions. And that's for you to sort of, you know, cover off anything that's still outstanding for you in terms of your understanding, and or to practice coaching or receive coaching yourself. So it's a pretty comprehensive journey. And in terms of the program, so the program cost is £1,633 inclusive of VAT. We're running a program, next program, on the 2nd to the 4th of December. And there's 2 different ways to pay. You can either pay in full, and if you do, we give you an extra inner balance. So there's another inner balance that you could then use with clients or coachees, or give to someone for Christmas if you'd rather. Or if you would prefer to pay in installments, then it's the 633 up front, so that we cover our cost in case you never ever pay us anything again. And then it's a remaining £125, sorry, remaining £1,000 at £125 over the following 8 months. So the month after you've trained would be the first £125 and then 8 months thereafter. If you're interested in this, and if you were to book with us by next Thursday, either of those options, then we will give you an extra inner balance. So if you paid in full, you'd end up with 3 inner balances. If you split the payment, you'd end up with 2 inner balances. And if you'd like to book, then please just email us at info@heartmath.co.uk. I'll drop you all an email tomorrow anyway, and so then if you want to communicate with me about it or ask any more questions, we can set that up. And just to let you know, not only are we doing the offer thing, but the price will increase a bit next year as well. I mean, not massively, it's only £66 we're going to increase it by, but it will increase next year. So if you're keen and that works for you, then we'd love to invite you on our Wednesday the 2nd to Friday 4th of December program. Wow, that brings us to 1 minute to 9. That's the other thing that Coherence does, is enable you to manage your time to absolute perfection, even if I was somewhat incoherent and didn't have my volume on earlier, so I couldn't hear the challenges that we had. But look, I'm not going to dash. You may well want to. It's probably been a long day. You know, you might be desperate to catch up with the American election or not, or you might just want to watch something before you go to bed. So thanks for attending. Thanks for your, thanks for being here and spending the evening with me. And if anyone wants to have a chat, I'm happy to hang out for a little while. So feel free if you want to go bye-bye. And if you want to say, let's talk.